Well, the first question I have for you, Dr. Gerardi, is why do you want to be the superintendent of the New Bedford Public Schools? Because it seems to me a very, very challenging position, especially at this particular time.
So I often say that there wouldn't be a need for superintendents if there weren't challenges. So I'm sure that all four of the finalists are excellent and have achievements in solving problems. And I don't think the problems or challenges scare us off. I also think that sometimes people see things from their own perspective and they feel like the challenges are greater than they actually are. The challenges in society are the same. I've had the good fortune of working in rural communities, suburban communities, urban communities, affluent communities. A lot of the challenges are similar. Some of them are different and unique. But we don't know how lucky we are here in the city and in where we are, where we live. There is such thing as rural poverty. I didn't even realize it, but there is a whole section of Massachusetts that doesn't even have internet. And the drug epidemics, those are across all communities, regardless of, the opioid crisis is really a challenge across all communities. Yeah, we have challenges, but I think that New Bedford's a city on the rise. I've been so impressed by New Bedford and what I've seen. And I really think that that's one huge advantage. I'm a Southeastern Mass, Northern Rhode Island guy. That's where I've spent most of my life. But I love Southeastern Mass. I think that's a major draw is the culture and the history of New Bedford. I absolutely love the culture and history, and I think that would be a major draw for me anyway.
It's no secret that a lot of teachers and principals have left the district over the past few years, and many of them will cite a lot of disagreement with the present superintendent as far as her approach. I've also heard teachers say that the morale not particularly good in the New Bedford system. What is your approach to morale?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to create positive collegial relationships. It's all about relationships. In fact, one of my colleagues, my assistant superintendent that I work with, her father gave her a picture of him rowing a boat that his students built with him. And underneath it, the caption says it's all about people. Every day when we walk by that picture, it reminds both of us that this is a people business. Developing relationships is number one. And the other thing is I think of, I was a high school athlete. I coached middle school intramural sports. I coached interscholastic sports at the high school level. And I've learned a lot from coaches along the way, and athletic directors along the way who I've worked with. And one who I remember fondly, we worked together in Woonsocket. His name was George Nasuti, and unfortunately he has since passed away. But he was a wonderful man. And I remember him telling me he went to a conference where he had heard the phrase, you have to give respect to get respect. And he is known throughout Rhode Island interscholastics and probably generations of Woonsocket students for the phrase, give respect, get respect. Right. I think that's something that in working with teachers, if they feel that respect, they're going to work collaboratively with the administration. And the last thing I would say is that I have a collaborative style and approach. And because I actually worked in industry for 4 years before I went into education, I've done jobs. I've been a custodian. I've actually, I've worked in food service. I was a teacher for 8 years. I was a building level administrator for 9 years. I was an assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum for 3 years. I've been a superintendent for 9 years. Having all those experiences, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and say to the staff, I've done this. Let's do this together.
Well, years ago, I was talking to an educator, and they said to me, something, if you don't have discipline, you don't have anything, because the kids who you're trying to teach who are behaving, they're affected by misbehavior. You get F word thrown at you, you get disrespect, you get tables tossed over, you get all kinds of stuff going on. And a lot of times the educators will say about this administration, hey, they don't back us, they're more interested in keeping statistics down and that kind of thing. Yeah. Discipline's very important. What is Dr. Gerardi's approach?
Well, so one of my favorite jobs was being the vice principal in an urban school system. And what's really neat is that if you still live in the same area, you get to see these people as young adults. And it's really nice when they come up to me and say, hey, Mr. Gerardi, do you remember me? Remember when you suspended me before the big game? I really learned from that. The problem is that was 15 years ago. Discipline has changed. And the last couple of years, we've had some regulations from the Department of Ed and some state laws that have changed discipline for everybody. I think you might have a communication problem in New Bedford. I think you have a communication problem in New Bedford because discipline is now a problem for teachers, administrators, and even the school committee. The new regulations prevent us from doing a lot of things that we used to do. What these laws were designed to do was to get us educators, teachers and administrators, to work together to figure out how to solve those problems, which is why we really have to work on social emotional learning and have initiatives to help work with those 30% of students who really need the help. So in Maynard, some of the things the administrators have done is helped create schedules so that we have morning meetings for kids at the lower levels. We had advisory meetings for the kids at the upper levels. The administrators and teachers have worked on bringing in different programs like responsive classroom, zones of regulation, and they're still working on it because this is not an easy topic here. You're already working at your district and your teachers are working on positive behavior interventions and supports. That's something that our administrators and teachers are learning right now in Maynard. I think the teachers and administrators and school committee members have to think about us all being in the same boat, and we just have to pick a direction and row together to make that happen. So we can fix it. I know we can.
Let me talk to you about testing. There's a school of thought that says too much testing. We try this test, we try that test. Sometimes last year it was this test, and next year it's another test. And the teachers will say, gee, by the time I do all that, I haven't got time to teach them what's supposed to be on the test. Sometimes the stuff on the test that didn't even match the textbook that they were teaching. So what about all that? Do you have a point of view on testing?
Oh, I certainly do.
And what is it?
And we are overwhelmed by testing. On different levels, too. As far as state accountability testing, if you look at internationally, all the other industrialized nations, they only test kids like 3 times during the course of their 12 or 13-year education. In the United States, the Department of Ed expects us to test them 10 out of the 13 years that we're educating them. Now, those we have very little control of because we have to work with the Department of Ed. But the internal testing, those are things that we have to look at. Now, I might be dating myself, and I don't know if you remember this, but when I was a teacher, I used to use the old mimeograph machine with that blue stinky ink, right? Yeah. Teachers have always been testing. The problem is there is research that formative assessments really do work, and that's understanding where kids are on bigger chunks of information based on the standards. And so formative assessment isn't bad, but I like to say that sometimes in education, we philosophize until we paralyze. I like the fact that you've gone to Renaissance STAR assessments for those benchmark tests, because that's what we did in Maynard too, so I'm very familiar with them. But then I was reading about your middle school redesign, and in that it said that the program you're going to use uses NWEA assessments, which are grade assessments as well. But there's a perfect example of when that happens, then I'm going to be there to help the teachers to say, well, pick one or the other. Let's not do both of them.
Any advantage of being an out-of-town candidate, so to speak, compared to an in-house candidate? There seems to be a different school of thought on that, too.
As far as when I'm hiring, I try to hire internal and external candidates, whoever the best person is for the job. That's really important. But there is actually research out there. It's called the halo effect. External candidates come in with a halo effect because, unfortunately for the internal candidate, our job is tough. 50% of the people agree with our decision and 50% don't. So for the internal candidate, they're a known entity. And sometimes people didn't always agree with their decisions, which makes it harder for them to develop those relationships and that collegiality, whereas somebody like myself who's considered an external candidate, even though I don't consider myself an external candidate, I'd be coming in with a halo effect because people don't know the decisions. Hopefully they're going to learn. That's why I'm so glad you invited me, so they can learn a little bit about me. They're going to learn about how collaborative I am. And I don't really think that I'm an external candidate because, as I said, most of my life has been in this area. I have friends, close friends, from Somerset, from Swansea, from Fairhaven, from New Bedford, all over this region. I have good friends that I've developed over time. And I also consider myself the cultural candidate because growing up in this region and spending my whole life in this region, I have a love for the Portuguese culture. In fact, one of my mentors who was a principal, Joe Cunha, he was the president of the Portuguese Social Club in Pawtucket. He would take us out for dinner at the Portuguese Social Club every Friday. Shrimp Mozambique is my favorite. I feel like I'm a cultural insider.
Why is Dr. Gerardi the best candidate for this job?
I believe that my skill set is ideal. You talked about concerns about the need for collaboration, and that is a hallmark of my leadership style. I also believe that I have some other advantages that maybe other candidates wouldn't. You know, I've been a leader in a lot of different ways. I'm on the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Executive Board, and coincidentally, Bob Baldwin from Fairhaven, the superintendent of Fairhaven, he's on that board as well. So we're advocating for schools on a state level, and Bob is always advocating for the need for more funding for this region. So if I were next door to him, he and I would be able to be even more collaborative on those sort of initiatives. I've also been on the New England Association of School Superintendents for longer than I've been in Massachusetts even. And so I'm setting up professional development for superintendents on, for all 6 New England states. So I have a perspective of what's going on all 6 New England states. And I'm on the Global Studies Group, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Global Studies Group. I've written a white paper on the importance of global citizenship. And so I understand global education as well. I think having that big picture is only going to help New Bedford shine in a big way.
Well, Dr. Robert Gerardi, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and joining us on Paul Santos Live. Thanks again and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.